Hello everyone and welcome to another fun-filled week of the next issue here on the Culture Cache. And this week our video is going to be, well, much like a lot of the comics that came out this week, a fun-filled follow-up to everyone's favorite DC story right now, Rebirth. Now you might be asking yourself, Power Trip, why in the world are you still covering this story? It's already been told, we've already had the spoilers happen last week, we know that the Watchmen, in some form or capacity, have manipulated and recreated the current DC universe into the New 52. It wasn't the Flashpoint. The Flashpoint opened the door and gave an opening for the Watchmen, anyway, to take 10 years of history and time away from the heroes, and that's what's changed everything into what we have today. But with this week, we actually got at least 3 I know of. I'm still sorting through a few of the Rebirth books. Mostly, I've still got to catch up on Aquaman currently. But after reading Rebirth, The Flash, Action Comics, and Wonder Woman, you can definitely tell that there's some very interesting follow-ups here. Now, for any of you that have read these stories, you should know exactly what I'm talking about. We'll touch base on the lighter one being probably Rebirth Wonder Woman, as she follows up from some of the shocking revelations that she had during Darkseid War that were also touched upon in DC Rebirth and now mentioned here. But the biggest connection to what's going on in the overall history of the DC Universe, the overall story here, is when she puts the lasso of truth around her arm and looks in the mirror and proceeds to ask what the lie is, what's been changed, and all of a sudden her memory becomes clearer. Her history, her past, she sees she's been manipulated, and it's not just the lie about her twin brother. It's actually more than that, because as we see in a very big homage to Superboy Prime, love him or hate him, Wonder Woman proceeds to punch the mirror she's looking at, and as the shards go everywhere, we see both history of pre and post New 52 history in the reflection there. This goes to show that, at least to some capacity, she herself has found a way to open the veil and see what it was that was stolen by the Watchmen. She doesn't, as far as we can tell, she doesn't know 100% what's going on, who stole her history, her time, or how much. That's not been touched upon yet. We just catch a glimpse that she knows something's out, that her mind, her history, her timeline, as it will, has been messed with. And now she's on a quest, though this one kind of mixes towards her trying to find, what's going on with her brother. Now, also in this week's issue of Action Comics, we get to finally see the pre-New 52's Superman step up and take over the mantle and role of Superman for this universe. Well, attempt to, I should say. Currently, Lex Luthor is also in the fight to take that mantle as well. And the thing is this version of Luthor has actually been a member of the Justice League. He is still a Luthor. Anyone that has read the New 52 stories knows that he is a villain to the core, but he's also a man that, at least on the surface, is showing he wants to be a hero. And the key here is, in a lot of old comics, pre-New 52, Silver Age, Golden Age, any of those, there would at least be something that would show, hey, Luthor's manipulating everything. He's really still a bad guy at the core. We haven't really seen that yet. If you look at the story that happened before Darkseid War, and then you follow the story in Darkseid War, leading up into this, the current story going on in Action Comics now, there are little bits and pieces of Luthor being, power greedy. I won't say power mad right now, but just greedy for power in general, telling lies to the beings of Apocalypse to have his new armor made and things like that. And he's still showing he does have roots of being a Luthor, but is he truly as evil as his past counterpart. Now, given, once again, this is, to a degree, until something else changes. From what we are led to believe, the New 52 universe is just a manipulated version of its former shell. It's had 10 years of its time stolen from it, so technically these characters are, in essence, supposed to be the same characters we've always known, just their history has changed, so they themselves, like their personality, their youth, that kind of thing has changed, because their timeline's been stolen, not quite revamped, so to speak. So this kind of falls back into that, into something I've mentioned a few videos ago. What happens when your history changes? How much of who you truly are is inherently in you, and how much of it is because of the situation you've been put in? How much of Luthor is going to be evil because Luthor is, like Luthor himself, is just inherently evil, and how much of it is because of things that happened to him? Like I said, with the New 52 universe, if you go back and read all the way from the beginning, you know Luthor and Superman have had their battles, they've had their issues and stuff like that, but this Luthor has tried to change, and like I said, has become a member of the Justice League after what happened in Forever Evil. So, we know he's still being typical Luthor to a degree, but we haven't had that other side of the coin flip yet to show us that he actually is being, that he's trying to manipulate things to his own way, and that he's not actually become good. We haven't had that yet. Now, given that's one of the mysteries that I'm sure this current story arc is going to go on, as well as the introduction of Clark Kent. Big shocker there, even though it's been mentioned in the solicitations for a little while now, but Clark Kent has shown up. He's claiming that he is back. He will explain later, as all characters usually do, but he has returned, and we don't really know what's going on with that. That's another one of those big mystery moments. And then one of my favorite moments in comic books in a while, the return of one of my favorite villains ever, Doomsday. And not what he looked like beforehand with New 52 Doomsday, but he's wearing his suit that he was wearing when he first showed up in pre-New 52. Now, hopefully, because like me or hate me when it comes to this, I am a continuity... I really hate to use this, but a continuity whore. I want everything to be explained and fit like a gigantic puzzle piece. And so that's whenever I get those moments, like finding out that after all these years since the New 52 was created, and Pandora mentioned at the end of Flashpoint that the universes were split long ago to weaken the DC universe for their coming. And we never knew who they were. And technically, for all I know, for how long it was ago, DC didn't even know at that point. Either they never had it planned out and it just happened to fall right in their laps this way, or they have had this planned out the whole time, just the story itself has changed over time, and this is the route that it's going. Either way, finally having an answer to that question was one of my favorite moments in the last few years. And so having this version of Doomsday show up, given the story has just begun, but I really hope they can explain what's going on with why Doomsday is starting to look like his old self, especially because the New 52 Doomsday was ripped in half, became a virus of a sort, infected the New 52 Superman, and then after going through a big black hole that led into Convergence, Doomsday was gone. Well, even to it, if you read a few of the issues there, he actually ended up also infecting Bizarro to a degree there. But that version of Doomsday, if he's anywhere, would have been still in Superman. Now, given after what happened in Superman 52, with the energy shooting out, maybe that has something to do with how Doomsday's around. Because if Doomsday was still in New 52 Superman's bloodstream when that happened, maybe we'll get an explanation there. We'll just have to wait and see in the upcoming weeks. But once again, this is still a pretty good follow-up to everything, because we're starting to see how everything's starting to fall back into place here. This version of Superman has spent so long hiding, and then out of nowhere, just to make sure that Lex Luthor doesn't tarnish his the New 52 Superman's name, and the Shield, the pre-New 52 Superman, shows up out of nowhere and proceeds to say he's going to take up the mantle. He is Superman. And then in the final follow-up, and what I've seen some people call the only real sequel to Rebirth to show up yet, has been Rebirth the Flash. And this one kind of takes place around the time period of when Wally gets pulled out of the Speed Force by Barry. And so we get to see what was going on at the time, what led up to that moment, and what happened afterwards. The key here is that Wally does reassure Barry that it wasn't his manipulation of the time stream during Flashpoint that created the New 52. It was someone or something else. They don't know who yet. And this ends up following up because Wally goes off to catch up with the Titans and the Teen Titans, and Barry goes on to follow up with Bruce, which actually has a pretty good little side bit here. Is Bruce in Rebirth, when all this stuff happened, was trying to find his lead on the whole Joker mystery. Something we'll touch on another time there, because that's going to be an epic, fun battle. Either way, at the time when Bruce finds the Watchman's signature smiley face coin, we find out that he, of course, thought it had something to do with the Joker, which, why wouldn't he? He doesn't know anything about the Watchman. This seems definitely more like something the Joker would do, And so they do their detective work and everything, and the blood on the coin, the signature blood, ends up having trace amounts of radiation that they've never seen before, aka from a universe they've never been to before, and things like that. So they also make mention of the letter that Barry brought back, but they never really mention what the connection was there of the letter that he brought back through from Flashpoint. My guess is that has something to do with what opened the door. I'm going to say it. We're probably not going to... That's probably going to be that big key moment in about a year or two when they finally have that showdown with the Watchmen. That's going to be that key item, is because it's a letter that technically should not exist in any way, shape, form, or fashion. It's not just from a parallel universe per se, it's from an alternate timeline that was never meant to be. Kind of like the Age of Apocalypse, Once it was created, it was there, but it, once anything, got overwritten because, as Barry mentioned during Flashpoint, his memories were going away because that was becoming the new main timeline. It wasn't just an alternate timeline, it was overriding the main timeline. So this was definitively a letter from a timeline that was never supposed to exist. And don't get me started on Convergence, because that can be... That's kind of where Brainiac manipulated things in a way that he inadvertently created these alternate realities, or I won't say created them, but forced some of them to become permanent things. Like having the pre-New 52 universe versions of characters sitting around whenever the New 52 was supposed to be the overwrite of those exact characters. But because of Brainiac's manipulation, it kind of forced them to become an anomaly. So that's why it's kind of weird. The pre-New 52 Superman should not exist at all. But he does. And things like that. So I think that's where we're going to find that letter from Thomas from the Flashpoint universe is probably going to be that key that keeps the door open, that's holding the door open, or let the Watchmen be able to do the manipulation they were holding. And that's why that letter's so important, but I'm not sure even Wally understood that when he mentioned it, or if he did mention that when he came out of the portal, his memories were fuzzy. So that might have been one of those things that's kind of eluded him, especially now that he's so uber excited to try and figure out what's going on with everybody else. Now, for anyone else that's wanting to see the continuation of the big overarching story that has begun with Rebirth, you will definitely want to follow up with Rebirth Titans and Rebirth Teen Titans. And from there, as far as I can tell, you also want to continue on with the Titans book itself. Now, here's where comic book writing gets fun, because these are the kinds of stories that this is a mystery that's supposed to end up being this giant overarching thing. It's going to be a long time before we actually see the culmination, the payoff for this, because now that things have been shown and changed, DC is using this time and this device that they've introduced to bring back the readers and that they lost from the changes from the reboot. They're going to spend the next year, maybe longer, but at least next year, reintroducing the legacy and those histories and things that were missing from before to stabilize the universe again to a degree and start to, like I said, bring back the readers that they lost from the changes and everything, but start to really make a more stable version of a newer universe again. So they're gonna slow down the big mystery, the Watchmen mystery. They're gonna slow it down. You're gonna see hints of it in Titans. Wally's gonna show up. The first big arc is gonna be Wally trying to convince everyone of what they forgot. Which, if you've read Titans Hunt, you can already know that they've already caught that idea. They know something's going on with that. So they're already kind of at a pretty good beginning point for when Wally gets there. But the key here is that, like any good story device, Wally's going to show up and they're going to kind of start to go after this mystery, and that's when DC's going to either introduce a new villain or a new version of an old villain or something to stumble them along the way, where they're going to get sidetracked and then sidetracked and then sidetracked again. It'll still build on the story because the sidetracks are going to be little bumps that help them remember things over time and get them stronger for when the big battle shows up later. But I would not expect, after maybe the first issue or two of Titans and Teen Titans, for there to be really a big follow-up on the Watchmen mystery. I would say after the next month or two, it's gonna take a back seat. You'll get little hints here and there through the year, but nothing major until they decide to make it a big story arc thing. Kind of like what happened with Pandora after Flashpoint. She made a big appearance, cameo, in all 52 of the #1 issues when New 52 started. But from there, we didn't see her again for a long time until we started to see the beginnings of Trinity War. We had Free Comic Book Day that showed the big hint of everything, but that was a good bit later. It was about 6 months later after what happened right there, and that was all we saw until it got closer to time for Trinity War, and then Pandora got her own book. And then, of course, turns out that was just a big misunderstanding, because Trinity War and the Crime Syndicate had nothing to do with what happened with what Pandora was doing with the New 52 universe. That ended up being a whole huge curveball, at least according to what Rebirth wants you to believe. But to give you a good idea, if we are to believe everything is or at least was planned out a way bit ahead of time here, and that the story may have just changed over time, but the New 52 happened at the end of 2011. It's now 2016. We're just now getting the answer as to why Pandora did what she did, merging the realities, and the beginning of the New 52. 5 years of story. I'm not saying that's how long it's going to take before we really get the payoff here, but just don't expect anything for a while is all I'm saying. If anything, I can tell you after reviewing these books myself, reading them, sitting back, this is definitely a ride I think you're going to enjoy sitting back and reading and just going with it. And let DC take the wheel, and you just sit back and relax and enjoy. Well, that's all I've got time for today, touching on Rebirth. So be here next week, and we're going to go to war. We're going to go into a civil war. And this isn't just the first one we've had. Oh no. This is Civil War II. I'll see you all next week for the next issue.